Thank you, everyone. And good afternoon, heading into early evening. So as Alex mentioned, I'm Cynthia Gómez. I'm with Unite Here Local 2. We're the Hospitality Workers Union. I'm actually a research analyst. I don't get to do much work representing members. And we represent members in I guess, several sections of the Bay Area now post our merger. We've represented San Mateo County since the early 2000s. We represent San Francisco and also in the East Bay. So I'll start by saying that the concept of social housing is really exciting. And a lot of the particular ideas, the nuts and bolts ideas have been really exciting. And what I wanted to talk about is the need, which is already known, but I wanted to get into some of the specifics of the need and kind of the moment we're in. So our members, we have at our peak, it will be 15,000. That's between the two merged locals when everyone was working. That's what we had. That's been severely impacted by the pandemic. And as late as the mid 2000s, around 60% of Local 2's members actually worked in San Francisco, despite the high housing costs. And that figure began dropping steadily and dropped below 50% for the first time since 2015 and has now continued to drop. And anecdotally, we have members who work at San Francisco Airport and live in Sacramento. That's the commute they're doing. We have members who live in American Canyon, Los Baños, Watsonville. And the impact on this is environmentally disastrous. It impacts our members' home lives, their communities, their own health. It is absolutely awful for everyone involved, no surprise. And the other context that I wanted to bring in, or another context, is that our members are dealing with an industry that's introducing changes that I would describe as introducing a permanent state of instability and uncertainty. So our members have fought again and again. We all remember the 2018 strike for our jobs to be good jobs that have a living wage, that have healthcare, that have decent working conditions. Since our members are overwhelmingly women, people of color, very heavily immigrant union. And so we fight very hard for decent working conditions and a dignified retirement. But what the industry was already doing before COVID, they have seized upon COVID to capitalize, to literally capitalize, make capital off of cuts in services that initially they got away with because of COVID. So slashing housekeeping. There are estimates that as many as, if the industry gets away with what it is attempting to do in terms of slashing housekeeping and other services, 40% of housekeeping jobs across the country could be on the chopping block. And they are not getting replaced by other good union jobs. So those are some of the stakes in this permanent instability, permanent insecurity. And so this once stable job is now becoming precarious and unstable. And I wanted to make a brief mention that I know this forum is about housing, but don't let the industry convince you that when you're skipping housekeeping, you're helping the housekeepers, because you're not, you are helping their bottom line. But I'll move on. So those are some of the contexts that we're operating in. And so I wanted to mention a little bit of this statistics from the Housing Our Workers report, which was this tremendously ambitious effort from Jobs with Justice, Choo and the San Francisco Labor Council. Our members were some of those surveyed. One of our members, Larry Lou Caramba, a housekeeper, was actually on the cover of the report and shared her particular story. And the authors of that report found that our members can afford a median rent of $1,220 a month on housing, which is just a bloody joke in a city where the average rent, I just looked it up, according to Zumper, is $4,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So it's absolutely ridiculous. The report also found that close to 60% of our members were what they call rent burdened. By that meaning paying more than 50% or more of their monthly income on housing. It's completely unsustainable. And those numbers, by the way, were pre-COVID numbers, and things have only got worse. So we've got some serious unmet needs. There were a mention of difficulty with BMR programs, which, we could talk a lot more about that, but in particular, our our members are often in this really infuriating limbo. They fight for good wages, which then put them into a bracket where they make too much to qualify for some BMR, for some income slot programs, but they still don't make anywhere near enough to survive in the city. And so they still can't afford to stay in the city where they work. And another problem of the many with BMR programs for ownership is that, as was mentioned in the chat earlier, homeowners association fees are mandatory, and they can range up to $900 a month. So all of a sudden, an affordable piece of housing becomes drastically unaffordable. That personally happened to me. I got very excited about a condo that I would have been in a position to buy until I added the HOA fees, and there was absolutely no way that I would have been able to afford that. So that was that. A thing that I wanted to close on, because I know we're over time, and again, we're mostly talking about the need and what could be filled by these kinds of programs, is Local 2 has held firmly to the principle that providing housing for one section of the working class should never be done at the expense of another section of the working class. So very specifically, that means when you're talking about the construction of this housing, the idea that you're going to somehow increase affordability or provide more affordable housing by cutting out union labor is absolutely unacceptable. And we've held out for that in the past and are going to continue to argue for that in the future. And that's come in terms of city initiatives and policies where that's what we've held, and we're going to continue to do that. So mostly what I've talked about, and we'll kind of kick it over to the next person to do, is to say, yes, this is a very exciting, there's clearly a need. There's not a quote unquote market demand. There is a need. And I want to distinguish between demand and need, because demand is a thing that you can measure in the market, and need is a human-based, it arises from being human, and there is a human need for this kind of housing that's free from the speculative market, that will not be done at the expense of one or the other section of the working class, but will actually attempt to rise, to lift all boats. And it's tremendously exciting that there is the beginning of a conversation over how to do that. And I look forward to hearing from my other panelists. So I'll kick it back to the moderator.